Today I'm here with Eimear, and I'm so excited to speak to you, Eimear, because we've known each other only for a short while, but in that short while, even I've been following you on social media, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
We could probably talk about what you are doing now for hours on end because it's a fascinating topic, and we will get into that in a minute. But first of all, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And without further ado, can you tell us what you were doing before your big career change?
I was in fashion retail, specializing in e-commerce. So I started in merchandising, which is the number side of buying. And then I moved to Net-a-Porter, which is obviously all online. So that's where I cut my teeth on e-commerce. And then after that, it took me to Hong Kong to set up e-commerce for a company over there. And then I came back to the UK and I was with House of Fraser for quite a while. And with House of Fraser, I actually moved into brand and marketing from e-commerce trading. So yeah, all fashion, mostly e-commerce and a bit of marketing.
So that sounds like a really awesome career for somebody sitting on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's amazing. And Hong Kong and House of Fraser and all these big brands that we've all heard of.
Yeah.
So what was actually going on?
It wasn't a career. It was very fast paced, which I enjoyed. Very like particularly like kind of I think that's the same in a lot of industries, like the lower entry level, like you can really see a clear career path. So you know what you're aiming for, you know the next step, which suited me to the T.
How do you know that? Is it is there like
I think so merchandising buying, there's very clear, like you come in and if you're in a bigger company, there's 1, 2, 3 levels that you're kind of working through, and you start as like a merchandising assistant, and then you become an assistant merchandiser, and then a junior merchandiser, and then a merchandiser, and then a senior merchandiser. So it's very clear what the steps are. So that kind of suited me because I'm quite like goal orientated, and I was always kind of had an eye on what was the next thing. And I moved to Net-a-Porter as a merchandiser because they were bringing in that high street experience in, and then like again, like every step I took was very kind of quite considered, I would say. Like it was like, oh, Net-a-Porter, that's e-commerce, that's becoming big, let's move into that. And then Hong Kong, obviously that just kind of came, and I was like, whoa, right, never thought about going to Hong Kong, why not? If I get the job, I'll go. And off I went with absolutely no clue what I was doing, or I'd never been to Asia. I was like, why have I done this to myself?
What an adventure. That's so
it was an adventure. Yeah, it turned out good, but yeah, it was definitely a bit rocky for a couple of months. And then when I was in House of Fraser again, like e-commerce brought me there, but I could see that the next, the exec level roles were turning into this. They were calling it like it wasn't a chief marketing officer anymore, it was chief customer officer. So it was combining e-commerce and marketing. So that's when I was like, oh, actually this opportunity came up to move into brand and marketing. I was like, well, that'd be quite good because I'm combining then e-commerce and marketing, and I can see the people that are on the board, are that's the kind of niche that's coming in now, and I'm never going to be the CFO because I don't have an accounting background. So I was always very focused on that until I wasn't.
So you say you were very ambitious. Where did that ambition come from?
2 things. I think just my family. Like my family, actually, I was brought up by 2 parents, self-employed. They ran businesses together, and that was always like in the back of my head. It's like at some point I'll become self-employed. But I think when you get into a kind of corporate career, you can see the next step and the next step, so you keep going. But yeah, I think that ambition and drive was there within my family upbringing, within like how our education system was. It was always kind of like you strive for your best. So that was kind of ingrained in me. And I'm not a sporty person. I'm not particularly competitive, but I am competitive with myself, that I want to know that I've done the best I can. So I think there's that. And then the other thing was, I kind of in the back of my head, I was also a bit like, I know I want to have kids at some point, and I can see that impacts your career. So it's like, get as high as you can before you have the kids, because it'll probably plateau then. So that was always quite a driver as well. Even though I didn't have the partner or any means to have kids, it was always in the back of my head of like, right, I need to get to a certain level, or at least as high as I can, to be in a good position for when you have kids.
What did you think that would give you, being in that particular position and then being a mum? What was the vision there?
I don't know. Maybe it was just a fallacy, to be honest, because retail does not do particularly good maternity packages. It's fairly statutory, to be honest. But at least it was a better, initial 6 weeks when your salary was higher. And you're kind of saving when you're single and earning quite well, because you don't have that much to spend it. Well, I could spend it, to be fair. I did a lot of holidays and shoes and handbags, but you don't have to spend it all, so you can save. So that was giving you a bit of a cushion. And then I guess I kind of thought it would be like, at least I would be coming back in at a level after a mat leave, and then I could start pushing again in a couple of years or whatever. But yeah, I think it was all complete delusionment now that I do have kids. I see what the reality would have been. I'm like, no, thanks.
Isn't that interesting? So where do you think that those beliefs came from? Were they based on what you were seeing other women do, or was it something that your parents taught you, or was it something that you just created off your own?
I guess it must have been a combination of what I'd seen other women doing and maybe my own kind of ideas, but certainly not for my parents, because they were self-employed. And like, I think actually my parents would rather that I was self-employed than, like, when they see me really stressed out, they're like, why are you in this rat race? What are you doing?
Did it feel like a rat race to you at the time?
No, I think I kind of got off on the buzz of being busy. But yeah, there's certainly moments where I would kind of take a step back. So I would like push, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm exhausted. I'm not managing to move the dial on X, Y, or Z. I will coast for a couple of weeks, and then I'll pick myself up and go again. But I kind of did always put in a little coast break, which I hope no bosses are listening to this.
It's too late. She's not there anymore.
I do think you need it sometimes, though. Like, if we're quite a lot of us are perfectionists or have quite high standards or hold ourselves to high standards, and it's like, well, actually you have 50%, is still pretty good. So if you're getting, where you can feel like you're getting really frustrated and burnt out and everything's annoying you, it's like, well, just disengage a little bit, do the bare minimum until you get yourself back on balance. So I used to do that quite a lot.
That's interesting. It's quite an interesting strategy, and it clearly was working for you. I've never heard anybody say this
really?
before. Yeah.
Oh dear.
No, it's great. Well, I mean, if it worked for you, then that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if people noticed that I was coasting. Maybe they did, and they were like, what is with this woman?
Well, you managed to create a very successful career by all accounts. So then what happened?
So I was working at House of Fraser at the time that it went into liquidation, and then was taken over by Sports Direct, which was a very strange time. And
in what way strange?
The focus was on get the stores, because I was head office based, and it was like get the doors opened and closed. And the Sports Direct model is a very lean head office. So it felt like they just came into our head office and went, we don't need any of these people. But rather than just doing that and making us all redundant, it was like, well, just let them sit there until they leave, basically. Wow. So it was just a really weird time. And like any engagement that I had with Sports Direct, to be a bit like, oh, I could try keep my job here. I was like, these are not my kind of people, and this does not align with my values. I'm absolutely out of here, which I was working on. But when you're in that kind of like, there was so much in the press about House of Fraser, and you're going to interviews, and the people were just like, so what went wrong? What did you do wrong? And I was like, great, thanks. Actually, can we talk about something else, like the positives?
Like it was your fault.
Well,
you brought down House of Fraser.
I think people were just interested because there was so much press about it. So it was a really strange time to go to interviews. I also was interviewing for marketing jobs when I only had, I think, 1.5 years, maybe 2 years of marketing experience behind me, but at a senior management level. And yeah, it was like I think I ended up getting the redundancy at Sports Direct, and what I did was take 6 months to just kind of decompress, focus on myself, get some balance. And and I think then being out of it, you realize how stressful it was. And we were trying to get pregnant at the time, and it just wasn't happening. And it was like, you go to the GP and they were like, yeah, everything's fine, all your tests are fine, just keep going. And I now, looking back at it, I'm like, it was stress. I must have been so highly stressed at the time that my body was like, no, you're not throwing another thing into the mix. Yeah.
I was listening to something the other day that was saying that when you're in this state of fight or flight, because, you know, again, going back thousands of years, if you were being chased by a tiger, your body was so clever that your body's going, okay, in order to run, I need this, this, and this organ, and I'm just going to shut everything else down that's superfluous. And it's the same now, you know, we're not running away from tigers, but actually, if you're in this constant state of stress, your body's going, well, I don't need my reproductive system to be working right now because I'm so focused on just staying alive, which is kind of your brain's extreme interpretation of what's going on. But I just thought that was really fascinating. I don't know how much truth there is in that, but I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I absolutely no like evidence on that. It's just my kind of gut feeling of what was going on. But that fright or flight thing, so I did hypnobirthing for our first child, and it was kind of saying like, if you start to feel fear, then the adrenaline is going to pump to your arms and to your legs so that you can run, because that's what it's there. The fight or flight, it's to either punch the tiger or run away from the tiger, and actually you want all your energy going into your uterus, so stay calm.
It's so fascinating, isn't it?
The body is incredible. I think we probably don't know most of how it works, to be honest.
I agree, and I think we underestimate the mind-body connection a little bit.
Definitely.
It's starting to shift. I think we're getting more and more educated on it, aren't we? So you've got your 6 months off, you're trying to get pregnant, and so were you trying to get pregnant and applying for new jobs all at the same time?
Okay.
And decompressing.
So
there's quite a lot going on in your decompression time.
It was lovely. I did one of those class pass memberships, and I just went to random gym classes all day, every day.
Amazing.
Cycled around London or walked the Heath, or just did what felt good to just take advantage of having 6 months out. Which again was kind of the reward for being slightly more senior and having a slightly better salary. That that redundancy package is a bit nicer.
To do that.
And then in my wisdom, I was like, oh, I'll go for a smaller company. That will be a good idea, because I won't be so pigeonholed into, well, are you e-commerce or are you marketing? Because in a smaller company, things kind of blend. So I went to work for a small jewelry company that was still owner run. And I mean, they must be like, oh, she was the worst hire we ever made, because I was pregnant within a couple of months of starting. Because it wasn't a stressful role at all. But I mean, they're amazing. You're so kind of like, oh no, it's amazing news that you're pregnant. It's great. It was really good, but not actually the right fit for me, because I think I'd spent so long in that fast-paced, big corporate kind of environment that a really small place was like, I was like, things aren't getting done quickly enough. Come on, let's go.
So then what happens? So you've gone into this new job, you're pregnant, and then what happens?
So during the 6 months, I had done some work on having this idea of, are we keeping it a surprise what I do now?
No, I think we can do the big reveal.
The big reveal is I am a dating coach, and I help singles to believe in love and to find it, and give them a toolkit of positive actions to go out into the world. The idea had been percolating whilst I was still in House of Fraser, and then with the 6 months off, I kind of worked on doing lots of reading. I started counselling studies as a part-time, and I kind of worked out like what I thought a business model might look like. And then you start a new job, and very quickly you kind of go, oh, actually, I don't have time for this as well. So then when I was on maternity leave with the first one, I kind of picked that up again and was like, okay, could I make this work? What'll I do? And I was kind of still in my mind, I was like, I'll go back to work, and I'll go back maybe part-time, like 3 days a week, and then maybe have a day a week where I start working on building up the dating coaching. And then the cost of childcare, you quickly realize that a 3-day a week role is just not going to work. It's all that you're working literally just to pay childcare. And then I got pregnant again. So I was like, it's like, right, okay, the going back part-time isn't going to cover the childcare costs, the looking for a new job, nobody's going to harm me, coming back off mat leave, plus being pregnant. And actually my heart is telling me, go do this dating coach thing. So that's what I did while I was pregnant. And Viola had started nursery. She was doing 3 mornings a week. That's what I did. I started building this out, and I've developed like a 6-week program that I take people through in a softly way. So people taken through some behavior change techniques and mindset work to kind of get rid of the limiting beliefs of why you're not meeting somebody, and to, you know, find your core values and find what it is that you really want. And then I couple that with really practical, right, what dating app are you going to do, and like work through any fears that people have around online dating, because it's a tool. It's the same as we use LinkedIn when we're looking for jobs. That's all it is. Just do it. But also find events to go to, find other ways to meet people, just lift your energy so you're going out into the world positively, being like ready to attract. And so that's what I did.
What gave you the idea or the impetus to start this business?
So I was single for a long time, and I kind of fell into this, like, I don't know, like saying I was okay being single, because that was easier than telling people I was really disappointed that I hadn't met somebody yet. And I was dating, and I was doing online dating, and I was going to singles nights, and I was trying to find somebody. But again, in hindsight, and I realized that I was probably giving off this vibe of like, I don't need you, because that's what I was telling everyone, to try protect myself from feeling hurt. And I finally met my husband Sam through Tinder, of all places. And I basically when I was in Hong Kong, I was in a relationship that I probably shouldn't have been in, but it did make me see that I missed being in a relationship, and that actually I liked being in a relationship, because I hadn't been in one for so long. You forget, you're like, I'm all right. So when that ended and I came back to London, I was like, right, I need to find somebody before I put all the walls back up, because they will go up and I won't even know that I'm doing it. So I basically project managed myself through online dating for about 18 months. And certainly not the healthiest thing to do. And that's why I was like, I feel like I could help give people some shortcuts so they don't do the same things I did. It was kind of, you know, when you're in that and you have single friends, and, you know, women will get together and have a glass of wine and be like, oh, it's all a bit rubbish and la la la. So I knew women were feeling stuck. And then when I met Sam, I could see from his friends and brothers and stuff that they were finding online dating really hard as well. And I was like, there's just this disconnect that's happening, and we need to do, I was like, I feel like there's something I can do to help. So that was the initial starting point. And then it meandered a lot.
And how clear was the vision for you of running this business?
I guess the vision is relatively clear, but a lot of the work is on building up the brand and getting the awareness up and creating content for social media and for newsletters and blog posts, and that is like, it's good fun and it has to be done, but it's also, I would like to just spend time with clients.
Yes.
And like that's the energy buzz, is like, seeing somebody that like has met somebody, or just even the course of 6 weeks, you can see people just change and become more open, and that's lovely. So it's the vision is being able to do that, and the reality is all the other stuff that you have to do.
One of the things that people that I work with struggle with is that they are miserable in their current line of work. They know that they want to change. They've sort of got an idea of the sort of thing they might like to do, but they're really missing that strong enough vision to actually make that first move. What would your advice be to anybody that's currently like, I can sort of see it, but not, it's not strong enough for me to actually take some action?
I think if you can, you have to take time out, because, you know, I had that 6 months out, and I actually did a lot of work. And when I went back to it, I was like, I had this a lot further than I thought I had. I had kind of brand values. I'd mapped out, because I'm also building an app to support the coaching, and I'd mapped out what that app would look like. And then I went back into a job that it wasn't a stressful job. I didn't work overtime. In theory, I should have been able to spend my evenings working on this, and I didn't, because you just don't, there's so much going on in life that you're just like, that's another thing that is going to sit there on the edge of the table someplace. And even like I say I worked on it during maternity leave, and I think that's probably, it's true, but it's probably creating a a false illusion. Like there was a good 6 months where I just sat underneath a baby, and a good 2 months at the start where I basically cried because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. It wasn't like, yeah, I've had a baby, now I'm just going to create a business. Like there was definitely like a long space of all you do is mothering, which is such an adjustment. But yeah. And then I guess it was kind of actually getting pregnant the second time that it forced my hand. It was like, you can't just leave it on the end of the table anymore. You have to do this, because the other option that was there isn't going to work. It's not going to fit around your lifestyle now. And I know it's an absolute luxury to have 6 months out, but even I think a month out where you can work within the confines of how you would have worked, like take yourself, find a quiet corner, just sit with your laptop from 9 to 5 as if you're working your job, but you're working on whatever your business is. Because I think again, we just create all this pressure of like, you can just, do a side hustle and then turn your side hustle into a real, but I don't think you can. I don't think there's enough compartments in our brain for it. But I don't know if you think that's true or not.
Well, I mean, I've definitely seen people create quite successfully side hustles. They tend to be the ones that don't have kids at home, because I guess pre-kids, you did have the luxury of coming home and you're just thinking about yourself. What am I going to have for dinner? And I don't care if I just have a bowl of cornflakes. But I think once you're a parent, obviously it becomes a lot more complicated. And by the time you've come home from a full day of work, and then you've fed the kids, you've bathed them, you've tucked them in, you've had meltdowns over, I don't want to brush my teeth. I think by the time you've been through the bedtime battle, it doesn't really leave you that much energy or desire to do much else. So I think it's definitely circumstantial. Definitely. It's interesting because actually a lot of people I've interviewed on this podcast have said that for them it was the time, whether they created the time themselves by literally just resigning and making sure they've got enough money in the bank for 6 months or however long they needed, or whether it was a redundancy package. I think redundancy packages are extremely exciting.
God, they are godsends.
It's like, here's some time and some money to think about what you want to do. So whenever I hear somebody being made redundant, I'm like, oh, this is exciting.
My husband set up his business 3 months after our first daughter was born, and that was basically like, quit and I'm starting a business. And I was like, oh right, okay. But he had taken 3 months out because he had changed jobs 9 months before, so he had taken 3 months out in between the two. And again, I think that it just gave headspace to like think of other opportunities and possibilities. And I think another one that I've found quite useful, just kind of get my head around it as well, because when you have earned for a long time and then you don't have a steady, I know what's coming in every month, it's a bit scary. But what I quite often think is that, well, what am I saving on childcare costs? And that's my contribution, right? So the girls, like I said, they're in 3 mornings, but if they were in 5 full days, it would be 3 times what we're paying at the moment. And then I'm like, right, well then guilt-free, take those 3 mornings and work on what you're working on. And it is creating the time. And also I think your mindset around money as well sometimes, because we can just get so it's not even that it's money obsessed, it's just you're just used to it, and it's like it becomes quite part of your identity. I think your title and your salary and your standing within whatever role you're in, and you have to change your mindset around that and be ready to let go.
How did you do that?
I still struggle with it, to be honest. There's definitely days where I'm just like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like my identity was so wrapped up in going to the office in high heels with designer handbags. And now it's like, oh no, I rarely get out of leggings. And I run to nursery, to school, to sit here in an office for a couple of hours. It's actually my husband's office I'm sitting in, or grab some time at the dining table to work, and then I run again. It's like, and it feels sometimes like you're like, I'm not sure if I'm good at any of it, because again, like in a job, you're used to having a performance review, you're used to being given things, milestones to hit, and you hit them and you know that you're doing okay. With parenting, I've absolutely no clue if I'm any good at it or not. I mean,
none of us do. None of us do.
And that's definitely the hardest job. And then I think with being self-employed, you have all this stuff in your head. You're like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And then the reality of time is like, oh, I didn't get to that. Well, that'll slide over to next week. But there's nobody to be like, well, it's okay to do that, or no, why didn't you do it? And you're just like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah. And I think that's why so many small business owners really benefit from having some kind of coach.
Yeah,
and I mean, you're a coach yourself, you know that actually just having somebody who's got your back, who is holding you accountable in the nicest possible way with all the best intentions, is spurring you on and giving you a bit of a pep talk, you know, every now and again, I think is really powerful, because you can get, you know, I've run my own businesses over the years, and it's very easy to just get in your own head and not know whether you're doing okay. And it's a very, very different ball game, isn't it, to be surrounded by colleagues and having benchmarks everywhere. Everywhere you turn. So you're saying that's still a work in progress?
Yeah, definitely.
Refinding your identity.
But and I think it's just that, like, everything has changed. It's motherhood changes a lot of things for you. Like, I don't fit into any of my clothes anymore. I have absolutely no motivation to do anything about that, and I'm exhausted. And then you throw in the long-standing thing that you had for 15 years is not there anymore. But it's also really exciting, because like, it's so lovely when I work with clients and just see them like open up, and you're just like, I know what I'm doing is right. I just need to keep doing it.
Absolutely. And that's what keeps you going. What did your husband make of you wanting to make this big change?
He fully is behind it. So when we first came up with the idea, actually, it was when this is a random story, when I was in House of Fraser, because I was kind of like a bit bored and fed up. I saw a Facebook advert or something for a 2-day seminar on entrepreneurialism, and I was like, I'm going to do that, and I'll just tell work that I'm going to a conference for 2 days, and that's fine. And then the date came around, and I was like, oh sugar, it's actually a weekend. And Sam and I weren't long dating, and I was like, do you want to maybe go to this thing with me? If you don't, it's fine, I'll cancel it and we can do something fun. He's like, no, I'll come. And I think both of us kind of sat there and went, we should be self-employed. How should we do that? And I kind of had this idea of like, there's something in us dating. Like, both of us have experienced how hard online dating was. Both of us have managed to make us work. There's something that we could do. And I kind of started that. It's like, maybe as a team, we could do this. and he was in on it. And like, I think the original idea was that it would be like a dating app, but we'd arrange the dates for you. So all you had to do was kind of show up. And then when I had my 6 months out, I went a lot further down into, well, actually the problem isn't the date. The problem is what you think in your own mindset. So that's where the work needs to be done. And as I went down that path, he went, no, it's not really for me. But he could see that I was quite passionate about it. And he's like, I think there's a really strong business in there. So you go do it. And then also, like, it works with our lifestyle. Like, we've kind of said, once we had Viola, I was like, the ideal was, he works 3 days, I work 3 days, and she goes to school 3 days. And then it's like, it's an equal balance kind of thing. The idea is that we get to the two of us like 50-50 being able to cover the childcare. That's not one of us having to put in the extra hours. And I make that sound like it's a burden. It's actually, like, some days it does. You're like, oh, the slog. But actually it's really nice for him to have more time with them as well, because then, you know, there's times where Viola has been really clingy to me, and everything's like, she falls, it's like, no, mommy, no, want mommy. And now she's like, no, daddy, I want daddy, because he's spending so much time with her. And it's like, that's quite nice to have that proper balance. So that's the goal.
That's nice.
Whenever we get there, we'll be good.
There was a big shift, I think, during COVID. I think a lot of men that I've spoken to who were suddenly spending a lot more time at home with their kids were like, oh God, I'm missing out on all these wonderful things. And obviously kids are challenging, but they're also wonderful. That's why we have them, right? And they're like, oh, I've been missing out on them coming home and showing me their homework, because I would get home as they're being tucked in, or, you know, all these things that I think men suddenly realized, this is quite nice to spend a bit more time with them. So I've heard quite a lot of men have a bit of an aha moment, and obviously hybrid working is helping men to be more involved in their
and I hope that stays. I do hope it stays. Like, it feels like gradually there's a little bit more of a shift to pull people back in.
Yeah.
But I think as long as we still have in the muscle memory of like the good bits from that period, I think we can kind of make sure we keep it.
Definitely. Yeah, there were lots of bad bits, but also lots and lots of things that went right during that time. But anyway, going back to you, can you, if you think back to your days of being employed versus now, how do you think your definition of success has changed, if at all?
I guess it's more defined by me and less, it's less defined by what I'm writing on my CV or what somebody tells me they think of me. Because I've definitely had some like, going through internal interview processes or review processes where you're kind of benchmarked and I'm like, I don't actually agree with what you've said. And, sometimes you're not always the full you in work. Whereas I think that's quite a nice, success now when you're building your own. It's like I say, I'm the straight talking dating coach because I'm straight talking. I'll tell you what I think, and you might even get a few swear words in there because that's me. And whereas in the office, you're like, sometimes you're holding back a little bit because you're like, oh, if I upset that person, then that will have this ramification. There's quite a lot of politics, and you kind of almost success is navigating the politics rather than just doing your job.
And what does success mean to you nowadays?
I think it's just that kind of feeling of like, right, I've done all that I could do today. And just helping people get unstuck, which sounds really cheesy, but that is kind of my driver behind this. Obviously I want to make a living out of it as well, but if I could just reach hundreds and thousands of people and be like, come on, you can find your person, don't give up. Give up.
and this is such a common theme that I see in my work, is that for the first half of their career, people are very focused on the prestige, the salary, the promotions, just keep going up the ladder and more, and buy the house and buy the car and get the partner and have the kids and all of that sort of stuff. And there does seem to be this shift in midlife where people go, well, actually I've ticked all those boxes, and now I want to do something where I'm helping other people. Because you sort of work out, I think eventually, some people work it out much earlier, but I think most of us, it takes us a while to work out that actually the real joy and the real satisfaction comes from doing something that's useful for other people. Not everybody, but I do see that trend that people sort of make a bit of a shift and go, okay, it's not just about me anymore. How can I make an impact on the world that's positive? And I think you're doing that, and I don't think there's anything cheesy about you saying that you want to help people get unstuck. That's a great thing.
And just when you were saying that, I do, like, one thing that I always kind of held true was like work is great, but if I'm on my deathbed, none of my ex-bosses are going to be there, or the owner of House of Fraser is not going to be like, oh yeah, thanks for your contribution, Eimear.
It'd be so weird if he was though, or she. I don't know who the owner was.
It's now Mike Ashley. But they're not. That's not what's going to come to you on your deathbed. It's going to be your family. And for a while I did go down that path of people almost labeled me as like, oh, she's single because she's too busy to find somebody. And I kind of, okay, right, well, I'll wear that badge that I'm the career woman. But I also was like, no, I want family, because this career isn't going to come for me when I'm dying at whatever age. And now we're all living longer as well. Like, watched a trend forecast the other week that 90 is going to be the new 50.
Wow.
Okay. Well, it was all talking about how so far the health industry has been about extending life, and it's about like basically keeping us alive, but not necessarily healthier or not necessarily living better. So now it's shifting into like, what is the kind of preventative wellness measures that we can be taking, so that if you do get an extra 10-15 years than your parents' generation did, then what are you doing with those years, and how are you making sure that you're enjoying them?
And you're not a burden on the health system and the care system and everything else.
So it's kind of moving from just staying alive to actually having a good quality of life, which then is leading into what you're saying about people are then going, okay, well, what am I doing with this extra time? Like, how am I contributing, or what's my purpose, and that's kind of kicking in as well, which is interesting. If 90 is the new 50, then think about that, because quite often you can go kind of like, oh, I'm already 45, I'm all right on my own, I'll stay on my own. Or you can be like, I'm 50, so retirement is coming up, I might as well just stay in this job. But actually, if you're 45 or you're 50, that's just half your life. So what are you going to do with the other half? And don't stay stuck in a relationship, stuck not in a relationship, stuck in a job you don't like. Definitely don't do that. And like, just make whatever you want to happen.
Grab life by the horns.
Yeah, you have to take action. It's great being like, oh, destiny will bring me what it's meant to bring me, but you have to make the positive actions as well.
Yeah. And you said right in the beginning that your parents were self-employed, and I guess to an extent they were role models for you. What do you think of what you're doing now?
A bit bonkers. I think no, they're behind it. I think it's taken a while though. Like, definitely my mum was like, what, people need help with dating? In my day, you just met somebody at a dance, and you go, yes mommy, I know.
Different times.
And then, and then it was like totally understand the desire to be like free of the 9 to 5 to make it fit around family life, because that's what they did. But it's like, well, why don't you use your e-commerce experience and be a consultant? And I was like, because I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to, like, people don't need to buy more stuff, they just need to be happy. And I feel like this can help, whereas buying something makes you happy for about 10 minutes and then you kind of forget about it. But yeah, from chatting them through what it is I'm trying to do, they kind of get it. And I think actually, my mum is obviously the first person to like everything I put on Instagram, so I think that's helping.
That's good. We all need a mum like that in our lives. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a mum like that too. She's brilliant. She's not on Instagram, but she's my number one supporter. So
that's good.
It's useful to have people like that.
Yeah,
It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
You too,
I wish you all the very best with the business.
Thank you.
I would love for us to catch up in a year from now and you tell me what a success it is, and that you've managed to work out your 3 days each per week.
That'd be lovely.
Goal that you've set for yourselves. I think it sounds like a fantastic work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
If you know someone who would enjoy this podcast, do share it with them and subscribe now so you never miss an episode.